reasons. It's Thursday, it's the last class of the MTCM Live Summit. And I wanted just to say that if you are still here, you are amazing. You are a hero. You have been doing great. But if on top of that, if on top of attending the classes, you've been putting the work, you've been doing the practice, you've put the hours, you've been actually doing the sketches, and you've been orchestrating and synchrostrating, if you've also mixed your music, that is next level. That is a whole new level. So I just wanted to congratulate you for getting till here. I just wanted to say thank you as well for committing to this. I just wanted to say that you are amazing, you're special, and you truly took advantage of this. And if you haven't, you still have a chance. You still can do it, all right? But commit and do the work, because that is what's going to make the biggest difference. Sorry, that's truly what's gonna make the difference. So go ahead, do the work, put the hours. That is what's going to take your composing skills to the next level. Nothing else. Then, like, the only extra thing that can move you faster, closer to your goals, is mentoring. That's why we have the Momentum Mentoring, where you work directly with me each day, each week. But that is the only thing. If you put the hours, that is what is going to make the biggest difference. All right. So now, today, what are we doing? We are doing mastering. So we've composed a track, we've done the orchestration, we've mixed the track. Now it's just, the final touches, just, a few things that you will learn. I'm not going to reveal, I'm not going to spoil. You watch the class and it's going to be a lot of fun. But basically, we're going to make it sound a little bit wider, a little bit bigger. We're going to make sure that the levels are right. We're going to control the loudness. And we're gonna make sure it's the last step, is maybe like the last 5%. It's very meaningful because we are doing changes at a level, at the track level, that are very meaningful. Every change that we do affects the whole track, so the change is very meaningful. We have to, the only concern that you should have here is be very careful, because we've been doing a series of things, right? Composing, then mixing. Now mastering. If you've done all these things right, at this point you have something that sounds amazing. But if you don't pay attention here at the mastering stage, if you make one mistake, we can mess up the entire track. All right? So be very careful. And if it's the first time, keep it very subtle. Especially with the type of music that you've written. It's orchestral music, right? So keep it very subtle. You'll see it's a very simple process once you understand it. So we're gonna dive right in. Today is mastering. You're gonna see my exact plugins chain, how I master. We'll talk about the L shape. We'll talk about a few things. As I always say, this class is being streamed live. We are live in the chat. If you've got any question, ask us any question here. But the class was recorded a while ago. We've edited it to compress time to give you the most amount of value with the least amount of time. But again, we are live in the chat. If you've got any question, ask there. We love to answer the question, to serve you, and to give you support. All right. Also, tomorrow we are going to have the last Q&A. It's going to be very special. We're going to be saying bye-bye, so make sure to attend. I'm very looking forward to seeing you there and to see all the progress that you've had. And finally, we will continue to see each other. That's the good news, because we still have a few master classes to go. So we're going to have a series of masterclasses. Check out the calendar. Where can you find the calendar? Go log in your students' dashboard. You're going to find the MTCM Live Summit. Click there. You'll see all the replays of everything that we have done up until now. And you're the first topic. You have the calendar there. Click there, and you will be able to see everything that is happening over the next weeks. All right. With that being said, let's get down to it. Mastering. Let me just real quick talk about, during the mastering process, we're not going to be fixing any mixing mistakes. So it's like usually when producing a track, it's usually like a 3-step process, right? It's the composing, the mixing, and mastering. And so you may be doing all these 3 things, or you may do the composing and then someone else is mixing and someone else is mastering. But each step, it just enhances the last one, but it's not supposed to be, we'll fix that in post. It's not supposed to, when you're composing, it's not like I'll fix this during the mixing process. It's not like this. Usually you have to get this right when, the right arrangement, orchestration, the composition, and then move to the mixing stage, and then it just enhances the sound. And here we're dealing about sound, and then when the mixing is right, when the mix is perfect, then we move to the mastering just to enhance that overall sound of the stereo track or the 5.1 track. So we gain two things: either we make it sound as loud as it can get if it's for library music or trailer or stuff like that, and then we ensure that the music, the sound traduces well no matter what playback system we're using, headphones, speakers, whatever it is. Okay, this is the track that we are going to be working on, and it sounds like this. All right, so that's way overcompressed. But that's sort of the music that we're going to be working with. So the first thing that we're going to do, and you can follow along. You can follow the steps here. In case you want to follow along, here are the slides. You can follow the steps that we're going to be taking. When I say follow along with me, I mean I'm gonna be doing a few steps, and then I'm just gonna put a timer. I'm gonna do something like timer 10 min, and then I'm gonna give you 10 minutes and to do the exact same thing that I've done. And because you have the steps and you have the tracks and you've got everything, then you should be able to replicate the same sound that I'm getting. Okay. All right, so file, new project, and it's gonna be a blank project, so create empty. And the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna load the reference track as well as our track. So this is one. Come on. So this is a track that you can download. Just drag it here, and then in the same this is the music that we're gonna be mastering, and then right next to it, you can drag the reference track. So in this case, it's Hans Zimmer, Time from Inception. Okay, and my recommendation is when using a reference track is something that gives us like a reference, right? And so my recommendation is have something that sounds as similar to your track. This is not the best example, so try to find a track. Maybe when you were composing, you already had a reference track because maybe it's a movie and they had a temp track, so you're using that as a reference track. So try to have the reference track should be very similar in sound, in orchestration, right? Like the instrumentation, like the. In this case, it's not, but still, this is a track that I use quite a bit, so I know it very, very well, and I'm going to use it as a reference track for sound and loudness. Okay, so I just put them here. And as I'm done preparing everything, I'll give you the 10 minutes so you can prepare the thing as well. So load your track and reference track in the same track, lower 6 dB volume for your track. And the reason why we are lowering the 6 dB, I'm gonna just bring this here and I'm gonna lower it 6 dB, something like that, is because then we're gonna do a little bit of volume automation. I'll explain why, sorry. But so we have some headroom. I lowered it because I think you can go in Cubase, you can go up to 6 plus 6 dBs. I'm gonna lower it minus 6, so I have 12 dBs of headroom. Later on, we'll see why. All right, cool. So that's that. And then the next step is we're gonna create a bus. All right. So during the mastering process, we're gonna be using a series of plugins. Some of them are gonna be like EQ, like analog saturation and stuff like that. And some of them are gonna be more like dynamic control type of plugins. So compressors, multiband compressors, limiters, and all that. So because we are gonna be moving the volume, we do not want that volume change to. So this is sort of like a trailer library music type of track. So we want it to sound as loud as possible. In this case, it's not always the case. If it's like soundtrack or like film music, that is like the music that goes to the movie, not like the album release, if that makes sense, then we don't want to make it sound as loud as possible. We want to keep all the dynamics, because when we were composing, it was designed to go maybe under dialogue at some point, then a little bit louder later on. So then it would be a different approach. But if this is like library music trailer type of thing, we want it to sound as loud as possible, just because industry standards, okay? So we are going to be, so these days industry standards, in general, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just industry standards, okay? We do not want to, we want to keep, but we do not want to have a huge dynamic range. In other words, we don't want the beginning to be super soft and then the end to be super loud. Yes, we want that growth, that build, but we don't want a big dynamic range. We still want the beginning, even if it's soft, to sound somehow loud, okay? So we will achieve that by faking, you know, the dynamics, and sometimes we will write volume and we will rearrange, like rebalance the volume of each section. See, section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4. The different sections that you can see here. We will change the volume, so we are not trying to achieve everything to sound at the same volume, the same loudness, obviously, but just, you know, like 2-3 dBs up, 2-3 dBs down, so the softer parts sound a little bit louder, and here's the important part, and the loudest parts we can bring it down a little bit, so we are compressing dynamics, so the limiter and the multiband compressor doesn't have to work as hard, okay? But for the volume, for the volume automation that we are going to write, for it to affect the compressor input, we cannot have the compressor or the limiter or the maximizer inserted in this track. We need to have it in a bus, all right? So that's what we are going to do now. This is the track, and we're not going to route this track to a separate bus. So we're going to create a group channel to selected channels. So basically I'm going to create a stereo bus that's going to go to the master, and it's just a group track. And it's down here, and I'm just going to make sure that this track here, it is routed to the group track that I just created. So in a way, this track does not go directly to the master track, to the master stereo output. This track goes first to the group track, and then it goes to the master. And the plugins that we will insert them here in the group track, not directly in the track itself where we have our music that we're going to master, okay? So that's that. We're going to create a group, and I'm going to make this small because I don't need to see it big. So we're going to have our track. This track is routed to this bus, and then the bus goes to the master stereo bus. Okay, so I'm just going to demonstrate this. So this is the track. This track goes here, and then this track goes. This one does not go to the master track. This one goes to the group track, and then from the group track, this one, the group track goes to the master, and we're gonna do the mastering here in the group track. Okay, so we can then move this track and the volume of this track, and that volume automation, it's gonna correlate, it's gonna affect, it's the input of the plugins that we're gonna be inserting in the next track. Okay, all right, cool. So hopefully that makes sense. Now the next step is we're gonna load the plugins, I believe. Lower 6, create the bus, yes, load. Yeah. So F shape, it's just here's what I load. First, I load an EQ, and to me, an EQ is it's two plugins. I use the Pultec, but you can use any EQ. I use the Pultec because I like what it does with the low frequencies, and I use the Massive Passive because I like what it does with the mids, and especially with the high frequencies. So that's the first thing. We're gonna have Pultec, and we're gonna have we're gonna have an EQ, and then I like to have an analog saturation type of plugin. In this case, I'm gonna use the Studer. It's more like a tape saturation type of plugin. So the next plugin, so first you're gonna have an EQ, and the second thing that you're gonna have is an analog saturation type of plugin. I'm using this guy here. You can use anything else. You can use the built-in plugin, the built-in strip in Cubase. It has it here, saturation, It comes with Magneto 2, tape saturation or chip saturation, so you can use this one as well. Or you can use Waves NLS. You can use a Vintage Warmer. I've used Vintage, sounds beautiful. I've used it for the longest time. In this case, I'm going to use the Studer A800, and because it sounds very, very transparent, and I like it for this style of music. So that's what we've got. We've got insert here. We've got a EQ. In this case, for me, it's a combination of two analog emulation EQs that I like very, very much. But you could use any EQ. You can use the EQ that comes here with Cubase. You can use just Fab Filter Pro Q3 or something like this. It doesn't have to be this. Okay. So then EQ first, analog saturation, and then after this, we're gonna load Ozone for the rest of the. I still have an Ozone 8. Boom. All right. So okay. Now this noise comes from these from the Studer. So the first, let me just load the preset that I like. Is this one? It's a very transparent one. It's film. And then I'm gonna see still has some noise here. I'm gonna go here and get rid of the noise. Boom. Out. Cool. All right. So that's done. So that's that. So these are the mastering. This is the mastering, the plugin chain for mastering. Now, for control, for reference, I'm gonna have two things. First, I like to have Draw, which is just metering, and I'm gonna put it at -14. -14 means that this red area here is. Sometimes I point out like this, like if you saw me what I'm pointing out. But anyway, I could do this, like this area. All right, cool. So this guy here, -14, to me, it helps. So basically what this does is, it just so I always say the same thing, use your ears, not your eyes, because sometimes the graphics, what we see here, the image is gonna trick our brain, so use your ears. But sometimes still, when we've been composing or mixing for hours and hours, our ears are so tired that it's nice to have a visual reference, okay? So in this case, later on, as I start, matching like levels and matching sound and all that, and I'm gonna be comparing this track with this track, and this guy is helpful to know. Okay, so this is how loud my track is, and this compared to this one, it's gonna sound loud. So careful, it's gonna sound loud. All right, so it's like, oh, cool. All right, so this is the level of this track, right? And towards the end, I'm just gonna lower the volume. But so this is my track. Now it's gonna sound super, super soft. Still, you can see this is the loudness of my track at the moment, and this is the loudness at the end of this time track. So you can see it's a little bit louder and all that. Now this is -6. Okay, so let me just show you real quick what's the true loudness of this track. I'm gonna put it at. This is crazy loud. This is super, super loud. We just have like 6 dBs of headroom. This is crazy, crazy loud, super compressed. It still sounds very, very natural. Anyway, we'll get there at the end. So back to 0, back to around -6 here. All right, so that's what we've got. That's what you have to load. And the last thing that I'm gonna load is the reference. This is the SonarWorks reference plugin, and this is this guy here. This guy here. It's basically, it just flattens the response of your headphones, and it has a selection of headphones, all these headphones here. In this case, mine is AKJ K702, and that's it. So just hear the difference here. So this is how it sounds when they flatten the response of these headphones. And as I press this button, this is what these headphones truly sound like. And you'll see that in this case, these headphones sound way brighter. and when they bring this EQ to flatten the response of these headphones, it sounds softer. So because these sound brighter, usually my mixes without this plugin tend to be duller, because it's like, ooh, it sounds bright enough in here, and then I change the system, I use the speakers, or I use a pair of headphones, and it's like, oh, I don't have enough high frequencies, right? So this guy flattens the response. Let me just show you exactly the difference. So this is flattened, and then when I do like this, you'll see this like, whoa, this is much brighter. Let me just do it with my track, sorry. One sec. All right, let's do this. All right, so just this does not change the sound of the mix. This is just the reference sound. This is just so you know exactly what you are listening at. All right, so it's a very, very helpful plugin to have. All right, cool. Let me see. I've got everything ready, and so before I give you 10 minutes to prepare everything, the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna match the volume of the reference track and my track, and I'm gonna create the EQ curve, and I'm gonna match EQ. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna EQ this track. But usually the question is like, what do I do? Like, what do I have to EQ? Well, it depends on the. We are not fixing any mixing problem here. We're not like getting rid of some like annoying frequencies or avoiding madness or. But sometimes we need something that's a little bit more brighter, or a little bit darker, or it needs a little bit more of low end. And it depends on the style of music that you are mixing, mastering. And so I'm gonna use the reference track because maybe I wanna get closer to this sound, or I'm gonna get closer to like trailer type of sound, or trailer like darker, or maybe this is because it's more like emotional epic type of music. Maybe I want it to sound a little bit brighter. So it's for you to choose, and it's for you to decide. But having a reference track sometimes helps. So the first thing that we're gonna do is, because sometimes we need like a frame of reference, you can do two things when it comes to EQ. One, you can listen to your track and listen to your reference track and just comparing them and go, okay, based on what I'm hearing, I need to do this or I need to do that. But if it's hard for you to see, to hear and to understand exactly what it needs to be done in terms of EQ, so your track sounds similar to the reference track, then you can use a match EQ type of plugin, like this one. I'm gonna use, in this case, I'm just gonna get rid of this guy. So I'm gonna use the Ozone. You can do this in FabFilter Pro Q as well, and many EQ plugins have like the matching EQ feature. So here's what I'm gonna do. First, I'm gonna analyze this track, and then I'm gonna analyze my track. And then based on the two curves, this guy is going to find the EQ curve that I would have to apply so my music, overall sound, my track, the overall sound of my track sounds closer to the reference track. Now, before you do that, super important to make sure that the level, the volume, the loudness of both tracks are the same when you are analyzing this. So I'm gonna lower the volume of this one to make sure that it matches the loudness of this one, okay? And to do that, I'm gonna use my ears, but I will also use draw to make sure visually that they actually are in the same volume level, okay? So I'm gonna start with listening my track. I'm gonna make sure that there is no maximizer or anything applied here. So I'm gonna get rid of this. And my track sounds like this. And we're gonna go to the loudest part, okay? I just bring up the volume here, so you can, this is the sequencer output, and this goes to Facebook as well, and so you can hear it louder. But this does not affect any of the mastering process. Okay. Right, so it's around -21, what we can hear right now. And now this is the loudest part of this time track, and I'm going to be lowering the volume, so it's at around -21. fantastic. So sort of like it's there. And now the next thing, you can see how different they sound. It's got a much fuller, sound with so much more body, and this sounds thinner. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, make sure that ozone is not bypassed, and I'm going to go here to matching, activate matching, and then I'm going to capture this track. So I would listen to the entire track because I don't want to make this chat super long. I'm just going to listen to the last part of the chat, like the loudest, the last part of the track, the loudest part, and then I'm just going to be capturing the overall sound curve. So here we go. So this is sort of like the overall sound curve from this track, and now I'm gonna analyze my track, same process, just for the loudest part, and I'm gonna capture it here. So this is the source curve, and this is the target curve, and here we go. And I just stop. And as you can see, the blue one is Hans Zimmer, right? It's like time. And then the yellow one is mine. Cool. So as you can see, the first thing that you can see, mine is a little bit brighter. You see the yellow one is a little bit brighter, so more high frequencies, and it doesn't have as many low frequencies. So the white curve that you can see here is like, hey, if you wanted to sound closer to this track, but you would have to bring up a little bit of the low frequencies, and then maybe you want to kill a little bit, just bring down this area at around 600, and then hey, your track sounds a little bit brighter. So if you want to sound a little bit more like this track, then it would be nice if you would bring down some of the high frequencies and do a curve like this. And we can enhance this so you can see more clearly. This is the amount of EQ that it would be applied. Now, this curve, this EQ, it's already been applied, but I don't want to use this because that's nice. That's a visual reference. That's nice that it's giving me the clues. But now I'm going to EQ it myself. But I have an idea. Now, important, my track has more like piatti hits and cymbal swells and stuff like that, and the other track doesn't have that. My track has instruments that sound a little bit more, that have more high frequencies than the Hans Zimmer track. So it makes sense that it has more, that sounds a little bit brighter here because of the instrumentation, because of the orchestration type of arrangement. And so it's nice to know that if I want to get closer to this sound, I would have to do this. But again, this is not the perfect reference track. It's just a track that I use often because I know it very, very well. But I know as well that there's two very different styles. Two different type of orchestration, so that's why I recommend having a track that's very, very similar. In this case, it's not very, very similar. So in my case, I will want my track to sound somehow a little bit bright because of the style. I don't want it to sound as dark as the reference track. So I may actually follow this suggestion. But I will not follow this suggestion. Okay, so I'm gonna deactivate this because this was just for visual reference. It's like, okay, cool, nice suggestions. Now I'm gonna do my own EQ here. So I'm going to deactivate the matching EQ, and now I'm gonna do my own EQ. And when I'm done with my EQ, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes so you can do the same thing, okay? So I'm gonna deactivate these two plugins. They were bypassed, now they are active. Okay, so I like Pultec because I like very much what it does with the low frequencies. So I'm gonna use this one to enhance a little bit of the low frequencies. And you see here, this track has some more low frequencies, mine has a little bit less. This is super minor, okay? So I'm gonna use this module here to bring up some of the low frequencies, and I'll choose exactly, you know, if it's 100, this is a shelf type of EQ. So the shelf, it starts either at 100 Hertz, 60, 30, or 20. So I'll decide exactly what I want. And then I'm gonna, with this plugin, the Manly Massive Passive, I like it very much for the mid and high frequencies. But you can use any just regular EQ like type of plugin, okay? So I'm gonna start with low frequencies. Let me just bring up this. I'm doing this just so you can hear it a little bit louder. Let me just not do this. Let me real quick load Ozone here. This is just loudness control for the computer output that goes to the stream. Cool. All right. So the Q. Look at this. Look at this. As I bring this up, you'll see these low frequencies going up. The white one. This obviously is not what we want, but just so you see what's going on. So I'm gonna find the exact, you know, point where I think feel comfortable. So that's sort of like, so as you know, I usually go like, okay, this will be the minimum, this will be the max, the minimum, max. I'm trying to find the extreme points, and once I find the extreme points, I'm like, okay, this is the max, and then I go from the max, and I lower till I find it's the sweet spot. I don't go the other way around, as you know, because you know, ear gets used to it, and it's like, oh, it's adding a little bit of low frequencies, and then it gets used to it, and it's like, sounds nice, let's add a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little more, and a little more, and at some point it's like, okay, this sounds nice, and then you come back the next day, and you're like, oh, this sounds super, like maybe you added too much compression, or too much low frequencies, or too much high frequencies, right? So I prefer doing it the other way around, starting with finding the max, and then just lowering until I find the sweet spot. And I'm gonna do this one more time. All right, so if you hear the double basses and all the low instruments, just focus mentally, you know, tell your ear to go there, and then I'm gonna be switching back and forth this, and you'll hear how it gains presence and body down there in the low end without adding. That's what I like about this plugin, and especially with this, the 20 or 30, it just adds more to the lowest part of the spectrum and adds some subsonic frequencies as well. And so here it gets a little bit more bummy and that's a little bit of muddiness, but here it's so clean. You know, it enhances the low end, but it still sounds clean. Now it adds a lot of low frequencies. You can see this here in the maximizer. See, it's not peaking or anything. It's not compressing or anything. As I bring more low frequency, look at what happens. what just happened. All right, so that's the first thing that I'm gonna do. And the second thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get rid of some of the, as the curve suggested, right? I'm gonna get rid of a little bit of the around 600 area. And then even though it says, you know, bring down the higher frequencies because then it will sound closer to this track, I don't want it to sound as dark. I actually wanna brighten this track for the type of music, the style of music. I wanna brighten it a little bit, and not too much. And here's how it's gonna sound. So a big 500. Around 5 to 600, something like this. I'm gonna cut. It's gonna be not a shelf. It's gonna be a bell, and then finally, it's not gonna be super broad. It's gonna be something in between. And then as I bring this up, I'm not enhancing I'm actually cutting, lowering. I'm actually doing this. Boom, 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 boom. All right. That's what I'm gonna be doing. Now I'm gonna deactivate this guy. Not too much because it makes the mix a little bit thinner, but it cleans a little bit this area. So that's for the mids, and then the highs. So I'm gonna enhance the high frequencies. It's gonna be not a bell, it's gonna be a shelf, and it's gonna do this. This would be obviously too much, super bright. So listen to you may want to take a listen to the trumpets. Try to focus on the trumpets, the piatti hits, and the cymbal rolls. But focus on the trumpets, and you see as this is bypassed, so no active, and then is active. So out in. So focus on the trumpets. Try to find the trumpets, the higher brass instrument that's performing this melody. This part. And so as I bypass it and bring it back, try to hear the difference, and you'll see that when it's in, it's a little bit brighter and more triumphant sort of thing. And when I get rid of this, it's a little bit more muffled, and it's very subtle. And that's what we're after. We're not gonna do like big changes. So here we go. So muffled and brighter, muffled, brighter. Right now I'm tricking your mind because I'm telling you what to feel, what to hear, what to perceive, right? And so this is not what you want to do, because you're gonna go like, oh yes, that's right, because I told you this is what I want you to hear, and that is exactly what you have to try to avoid, right? When you are mixing, it's like, because visually I'm seeing this is what I'm gonna be hearing, and it's not like this. It's like, try to close your eyes and truly hear the difference. All right, try not to tell you what is gonna happen when you are bypassing this. Okay, I'm telling you, and it's gonna be very hard for you not to hear what I just told you, but when you are doing your own mix, try not to follow what you see. Try to follow what you hear instead, right? So anyway, so baffled, brighter. And focus on the trumpet because where you are gonna hear the biggest difference. All right, I'm gonna go a little bit more extreme so you can hear the difference, and I'm gonna be bypassing this in the long notes moment, because if I bypass it when there's like a note repetition or change notes, it's very hard to hear the difference. So I'm gonna be bypassing it in the long notes moment so you can hear the sonic difference. Right, so that was obvious. Now this is the sweet spot that I found, and here's the difference. All right, I'm gonna bring this back. I brought this down so this wasn't affecting me, so I could hear the difference of this one just alone. All right, so that's it. So here's the difference. And the overall difference is, obviously. So with the two EQs, I'm gonna bypass. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna bypass and bring it back. You're gonna hear a click. So it's gonna bother a little bit. But what you're gonna hear again, it's a little bit more of low, more presence, more body, more support, more low frequencies, and so a little bit cleaner and a little bit brighter. So here we go. So this is before and after. So yellow is before, after. Okay, so before. Let me just bring this in volumes so you can hear it a little bit louder. So before. Excuse me. Too much compression, it's making it hard. The click, the pop makes it hard to, but here's the difference. And you can go a little bit more extreme. In this case, the music doesn't need it. Now this plugin, the Mindly Massive Passive, this is not a lot. It looks like a lot, but it's not a lot. This is like 3 dBs. This is like 3 dBs. I don't want to use this one. I wanted to use the... Anyway, I wanted to use the... Anyway, so that's it. Now your turn. I'm going to give you 10 minutes, and what I want you to do is I want you to set up so just one track and load the music that we're going to be mastering, load the reference track, and then lower this track but around minus 7 dBs, and then do the magic if you want. So you can do capture the first one, capture the target curve, and then target the source curve. You don't have to do this. I already showed you how to do this. But basically, if you don't want to do this, then at least load your track, load the reference track, then lower this one by 7 dBs, and then listen to this track and listen to this track, listen to this track and listen to this track, and see the difference. What's the sonic difference? And try to understand sonically what's going on. You'll see that this got more body, it sounds a little bit darker, and then try to EQ this track and try to give it a little bit more of low frequencies. If I was doing this with like a regular plugin, like a regular EQ plugin, what I would have done would have been something like this. I would have brought up, like a 20 hertz, something like this. This is a shelf, and I would, brought it up like 2-3 dB, something like this. Then what I've done, so this is this guy here. This is what I've done here. Then here, what I've done is something like this at around 600. Somehow, whoops, excuse me. It's more like a wide curve, but something like this. It's very, very subtle. So this would be like 2-3 dBs max, like this. And then up here, it was a shelf again, and at 3.9, so at 4K, I did something like this. So this is basically what I have done. It's a very, very subtle curve, and this is what I've done with the EQ. So if you did this with like regular digital transparent type of EQ plugin, you would have done something like this. Okay, so now it's your turn. Load this track, load the other track, lower the volume, compare sonically, go back and forth. It's like, oh, cool. All right, this one sounds like this one sounds like that. And then EQ your track so it sounds a little bit more similar to this one, except, in my opinion, this one is a little bit too dark. And I know this is darker in sound, so it's not as much high frequencies. Mine, I wanted to sound a little bit brighter, and that's why I did this. But if I wanted this one to sound a little bit more like this, then I would have gone like this instead. Okay, so your turn. I'm gonna give you 10 minutes. I know that I've gone for more than 10 minutes, but it's also because I had to explain a lot of things. Now you just, without, don't think too much. Just load the two tracks, lower the volume, listen to the two tracks, EQ this a little bit, and then we'll keep going. All right, I'll give you 10 minutes. This can be done in 3 minutes, but I'll give you 10 minutes because if any technical problem arises, so you've got time to fix it. All right, so your turn, and I'll be back in 10. All right, 20 seconds. Then, hopefully that went well. Now we're gonna do the automation. The next thing that we're gonna do is the automation. Now remember, the way we set things up is all the plugins, both for like EQ, analog saturation, and dynamic control, as well as the wither and the exciter and all that, is here. So this is the sound source, right? And sound source is here. Let me see, yeah, the sound source is here, and then it goes to a bus. And in this bus, we've got all the plugins, including the dynamic control plugins, meaning the compressors. So depending on the loudness of this track, the compressors, the threshold, is going to be so the amount of compression and dynamic control in this bus, it will depend on how much loudness comes from the initial the sound source, right? So if it's very, very soft, it's not gonna compress. If it's very loud, then it's gonna compress a little bit. And as we move, as we start doing things like this, and we change the volume, when it's low volume, it's not gonna compress. When it's low volume, it's not gonna compress. When it's louder volume, it's gonna compress a little bit more. That is why we have all the plugins here, all right? So now, what we're gonna do is what we've explained at the beginning. We do not want this. For this style of music, it's not, I'm not saying this is the way things are done, but for this style of music, that's more like trailer library type of music, we do not want that much dynamic range. It's just the way it is. And so we're gonna make sure that it sounds not super loud all the time, but it sounds somehow loud all the time. All right. So now we are going to write some automation. Now, before writing some volume automation, we're gonna prepare a few things, and we need to know what is the ceiling. And so we're gonna go to the loudest part. The ceiling is gonna be this, the loudest part, and then we're gonna adjust. Let me just remove this. Now I'm gonna remove this. I'm gonna remove ozone here, and this is the other one that went to. All right. So I'm gonna bring this down. So in the loudest part, it's sort of like it's compressing. It's limiting just a tiny bit. So I just want to know what is the ceiling. Okay, so I'm gonna go here, and that's as loud as it's gonna get for now. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create another track, and you'll do the same thing. I'm gonna create another track that's gonna go I'm going to create another track that is not going to go through all the plugins chain, so it goes right to the master bus without any mastering, processing, or anything like that. So I will place the reference track there, right? Because I'm done comparing the two tracks. I'm done. Now I'm gonna start working with loudness and all that, dynamic control. And so I want to move the reference track to another track that does not go through the plugins chain, so I can compare, because this has already been mastered, the reference track. So I'm gonna create an stereo audio track that goes directly to the master, does not go through the plugins chain, and it's a reference track. All right, reference track is going to go here. I'm going to move it up here. It's going to be small because I need to be very big, and I'm going to move this track here. So this one goes directly to the master bus. Let's see if that's true. Yeah, so this is the reference track that goes directly to the master track. It is not being processed. it just has the draw, which is just measuring how loud it is, and the reference, which is just, again, it's for flattening the output of the headphones or speakers. All right, so that's cool. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. So the loudest part of this track would be, I know the camera is covering it, but I'm gonna put this one here. Let me just make this, move this here, so I can do this. All right, cool. So this would be the loudest part, and I'm gonna bring this up to 0 again. So you see, -1, -0. That's it. All right. So this is gonna sound loud now. All right, this is the sound of a very professionally mixed and mastered track. So this is going to be the reference for us as we move forward, okay? But this is not being processed in any plugin. That's why we separate it in a separate track. All right, and this is our track. All right, so the first thing that we did is going back to, we're going to write some automation. So we reduce dynamic range a little bit because it's a library music type of track. And so the first thing that we did is we went to the loudest part, and then we just went to the maximizer and we lowered it. So we just increased the volume up until the maximizer is limiting. Alright, it's limiting a bit. So that's gonna be our ceiling. That's gonna be the max. It's gonna sound louder than that, but we'll get there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is 3 things. We're going to write automation, okay? And we're going to write 3. The step that we just did was prepare the automation. So we move the reference track to a new track that doesn't go through the plugin chain. We brought the maximizer up, so it starts limiting in the loudest part. So it limits a bit. It limits a bit in the loudest part, and then I'll explain this later. All right. So now we're gonna do automation. Okay. We're gonna do three things with automation. First, the obvious one is we are gonna reduce dynamics. Okay, and to do that, we'll use our ear, and we're gonna compare the different sections in the track. And it's like, okay, the softer section still sounds loud enough, etc. Right? That's the first thing that we're gonna do. The second thing is we are gonna enhance some of the emotion. So we're gonna bring up and down the music if needed, or to the more emotional part, just to enhance that emotion. And then we're gonna reduce peaks. And what that means is that, when the big drums were like the section change moments where we've got like a cymbal and timpani roll, or big taikos or whatever it is, like big hit, we are gonna slightly, and this is a mastering trick, we're gonna slightly bring down the volume right there for like 2 or 3 dBs. So it's not noticeable, but still we're bringing down the volume of the track just in that moment, so the limiter doesn't have to work as hard, and then we can bring up the overall loudness of the track. So we're going to be doing these 3 things, okay? So I'm going to start with reducing dynamics, and you're going to see me doing it, and I'm going to try to explain why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And then I'm going to do add a little bit of emotion, and then reduce peaks, and you're gonna see me doing this, and then I'm gonna give you some times for you to do the same thing. All right. So let me see. I'm gonna move this out of the way a little bit. No, I know that it's covering it, but all right. So this is my track. I'm gonna get rid of this just for a sec, and I can get rid of this, and get rid of this, and get rid of this for a sec. All right. All right, so as the track starts, so this is the raw, okay? So to me, it's like for library music, the soft part in this area is nice because that means it's loud enough. This is very, very loud. And this area is, the loudest part when when it's hitting the ceiling, when it's hitting the maximizer, the limiter, and it's compressing. This is where it should be. And if you see at the Hantimer track, this is the soft part, which is just crazy. It's got a lot of low end. That's why it has so much. It goes up so much. But this is the soft part, right? And then as you reach, this is a super, very, very compressed track, especially towards the end. But the compression is so transparent. It's great. And now, just one small little thing. You would not need to compress that much and to push super hard the limiter if you did a good job during the mixing process. If you did a good job controlling dynamics during the mixing process, then you will not need to work as hard here. Okay. Now, the more you compress during the mixing process, in general, I do not compress that much when it's just like a orchestral track. This one is very, very compressed and very, very limited. This is not the exact track that you hear in the movie. This is the album release, right? Music, and so it goes to a different processing. Anyway, but just take a look at the loudness. All right. Now when we move closer to the end, it's gonna go right above the red area. Look at the dynamics. See how it does it, and then it goes down, and you can see it here as well. So this obviously it's the music, the way it's been composed, it's doing that. But also you can enhance that just a tiny bit here. This is the very last process. We are mastering this, and sometimes we can enhance those emotions a little bit. So loudness here is right below red. As we get towards the end, it's right above red. Towards the end, it goes way beyond. And then at the very end, it's just this crazy amount of compression. We've got like 6.4 dBs of headroom, which is crazy. Alright, this is super loud, but this gives you like a frame of reference. Okay, my track, the start to see what I'm talking about is this just like it's industry standard. So that's what I'm gonna go after. Okay, so we've got a few sections. So I'm gonna start, and that's why I brought down the volume by 6 dBs. So I now have headroom. So it's gonna start louder. I'm gonna just it's gonna start louder, and I'm gonna remember that this was a -6, -5.67. Okay, so I'm gonna start louder. Let me just get rid of this guy here. All right, I'm gonna start louder. So get closer to the yellow area. All right, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. So as track starts. So now this is just celesta and high strings. We don't have the bottom end, which would be what would create, would bring up this. So it doesn't have to be super, super loud. But at the moment we brought this up by about 4 dBs because it was a -6, -1, so it's like 5 dBs. Next section comes here. next section. So I'm just lowering like 1 dB, 1 dB. I'm gonna use this piano pa-pa-pa-pa-pum to bring it up. And this section I'm gonna bring it up quite a bit. So I'm gonna go from -2 to +2. So it's like a 4 or 5 dB leap. Ooh, too much. Remember, we need to go back down to 6. The 6 is -6 is where we were. So if we don't go back to -6, sorry, this is gonna start peaking. This is gonna start limiting a lot. And again, we made this part much louder. See what we are doing? We're just killing all the dynamics. And this is not what you have to do all the time. Again, this is just for this style of music. It's a library track, and maybe it's too much. But you know, this is like a dB difference, dB, and then it goes up quite a bit because this section is very nice. And I wanted to hear it a little bit louder. We can work with that. We can work with that. Hey, they're back. Hey, Jose, how are you? Cool. So that's that. Now, so that's the first thing that we've done is automation to reduce dynamics, and I'm using my ears, so when I'm bringing down the volume, it still feels like it's growing, like the music is growing. And you can see this here, you know, yellow area above red area, and then way above. So we are reducing dynamics, and still there's a dynamic change. Okay, so that's the first thing that we've done. Second thing is we're gonna add a little bit of emotion, and this is about, I'm not gonna do the entire track, but I'm gonna go here, and you can feel the music, how it's going up and down, so we can enhance that a little bit. So we can help that a little bit. And here it's like this. Let me see. Yeah, we could have a curve going from here to here. Same thing here. We can create a little bit of movement here instead of creating any. I don't see like a clear musical direction here, so I'm just gonna just create a little bit of movement. Just a little bit of movement here. Just gonna get rid of this guy. And that's it, okay? And we could do that for the rest of the track, but you can see what we've done here. It's not a big difference. What is that? -1 to 1, so it's like 3 dBs of difference with the up and down. So we can do that. I won't do it for the entire track, but you get the idea. So that is for enhancing the motion, and then we're gonna reduce peaks. And reducing peaks is this part here, for example. Look what happens here and here. Right, it compressed. Then we've got this hit, boom, it compressed again. The loudest one is this one. Whoa! There's a lot of compression going on here, right? A lot of limiting. It limit. Look at this. I think it limit like minus 4 dBs. Boom, minus 4.4. That's a lot, and it's noticeable. You can clearly hear that. So there are two things that are going to help avoiding this. The first thing is pushing this a little bit. I'm going to talk about this 1 second. So this is analog saturation. In this case, it's tape saturation. When you have a little bit of saturation, you are compressing a little bit of the transients. So I'm going to use this one first to kill some of the transients. And in this case, the more you saturate the signal, the more compressed it's going to be. So this is going to be super, super subtle, but this is going to help this a little bit. So the more you compress, So the more you saturate, sorry. So at this moment, this is a tape, just a word on tape saturation. We are in the analog world, or emulating the analog world right here. So when it goes beyond 0, so when it goes to the red area, it's not actually like if you went in the red area in the digital world, where if you go beyond 0, then it clips and it sounds awful. In the analog world, and especially in the tape, the magnetic tape type of sound, when you go in the red area, it's a very natural and pleasant type of saturation. So we can go into the red area. The more we go into the red area, the more it's going to start saturate. At the beginning, we won't even hear saturation. The more we go, the more saturation that we're going to hear. And the more we go there, it's going to compress a little bit, okay? Now, as I go in the red area, I'm going to be compensating the output. So the volume is going to be the same. It's saturating and compressing a little bit in a very nice and pleasant way, magnetic feel type of thing. All right, so we're going to do that. I'm going to start without saturating, and then so that helped a little bit, because it's the tape is compressing a little bit. So I'm going to use this one to add a little bit of that tape flavor, analog flavor, and saturate a little bit. And also I know that the more I saturate, the more it's compressing a little bit, because of the tape type of saturation. All right, so we've got that. So that helped a little bit. And the second thing that's going to help is, now going back here, is the automation. We're going to use automation to reduce peaks. And so here, this is the loudest part, clearly. So here, right here, we're going to bring it down just a tiny bit. This is -4, so we're going to go to -5 maybe. So just 1 dB. So it's so subtle that we won't even hear the difference. All right, so we're going to try to find the spot where this actually helps this guy here. So maybe it has to be a little bit more like this. All right, down. I see. So before and after, I'm gonna just remove this. See the difference? This is a little bit more. This is a little bit less. One more time. I'm gonna remove this. -3, right? -2. See the difference? So this 1 dB is something that we can then push farther as we are maximizing, as we are trying to gain loudness towards the end of the mastering process. And it's very, very subtle, and we don't even hear the difference, okay? Now, this is killing the dynamics, yes. But this is killing the dynamics, yes. There's no but. It's just, if you are passionate about realistic sound, this is awful. What we're doing right now, it's awful, right? This is not how an orchestra sounds, by far. But this is, if you like this sound, this is what it is, just so you know, okay? I'm just showing you the tools. You don't have to do this all the time, but these are the tools. All right, and towards the end, we're gonna do something similar. It's not very, very problematic, but we're going to do it anyway. Right. And then here towards the end, I just wanted to delete. And hence the emotion here. Sort of. yeah, sort of thing. Okay, cool. All right. So this is what we've got. All right, so that is dynamic control before we go into the multiband compressor, before we go into the maximizer, and this is going to help tremendously when we are trying to bring up the volume and gain loudness. Okay, this is going to help a lot. If we don't do that, and if we just came here and try to make it sound louder and louder and louder and louder and louder by pushing this and compressing, we would have a lot of problems. Obviously, we won't go down here, but now later on, as we push this down a little bit, as we start gaining loudness, this is going to help a lot. Okay, so we were at minus 7.6. All right, so hopefully that was helpful. The next step that I'm going to stop for a sec, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do the exact same that I've done. And I understand that this takes longer, but just for you to experiment a little bit with what we've been doing. The next step, this is going to be the easiest. We're going to do dynamics, control, exciter, imager, and then maximizer. Super, super easy, especially these 3 parts here. This is a lot of fun. We're going to be moving very, very fast. We'll see, like tangible sonic changes here, and this is a lot of fun. But before you do that, work on the automation. Now, the steps. Prepare the automation. So first of all, at -6, which is where you have your volume at the moment, it's a -6. Before you do everything that I've done here, at -6, use your maximizer, L3 multi-maximizer, or L1 ultra maximizer, or the Cubase or Logic maximizer, whatever it is. Go to the loudest part and then bring it down so it starts compressing. As soon as you see it compressing 1, 2, 3 dBs, then stop there. So to me, I was bringing down, and at minus 7.6 is where I stopped. Minus 7.6 is what I stopped earlier. Let me just get rid of this guy. And then once you have that, once you've got that reference, then do a little bit of this, and you're going to do 3 things. First, you're going to dynamic control. So each section, make sure that change the volume of each section so you're using dynamics of the overall track. So that's one thing. If you've got time, add a little bit of emotion whenever you think that you can add emotion. Think as if you were the DJ, right? And you're like, okay, the music goes up and down here, just enhance those emotions. And then finally, if you've got time, do a little bit of peak reduction. And this sort of like artificially bring down the volume in those loudest parts where you've got this section change or the timpani roll or whatever it is, right? Or like the big taiko or like the synth coming in, whatever it is, just bring it down and take a look at what's the maximizer doing and how much it's limiting and how this is affecting, reduce the amount of work that the maximizer has to put into compressing those bands, those frequencies, okay?
And when you use the saturation, analog saturation to reduce the peaks, do you think it's possible to use API 550 also to do that work?
Okay, so the API 550 it's an EQ emulation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a great question. Sometimes I do not use this because I'm like using this guy and this guy. Yes, I'm EQing, but it's already adding a little bit of analog saturation because it's an emulation of analog unit. So I don't have as much control as I have here because I have an input and an output and I can control how much I am saturating. But sometimes I don't even use this one because I know in advance that these guys very subtle, they already saturated the signal a little bit. So if you don't want to do analog saturation, it's completely fine. With stuff like this, it's gonna be saturating a tiny bit. You don't have the control of how much saturation, right? If you have the NLS, you'll have the control here, NLS. You have the control here.
Yeah.
And if you've got vintage warmers, not this one, sorry, but you would have the control here, sort of thing. If you have a vintage warmer, you also have a drive control, sort of thing. Not with these ones, but it's okay. You can just not do analog saturation if you want. So the next part is easy. There was this question about is a maximizer the same as a compressor, and the answer is no. A compressor is a compressor. It's you've got you've got audio, and you set up a threshold, aligns like every, transient that goes beyond that line, beyond that threshold, above that threshold, I'm gonna reduce it. And depending on the ratio, for example, if it's a compressor that's the ratio is 2 to 1, for every 2 dBs, it's gonna reduce 1, okay? So 4 dBs, 2, etc. A limiter is a threshold, a limiter is a compressor that with a ratio that is 10 to 1 or beyond. So 20 to 1, 10 to 1, 12 to 1, 20 to 1. So it's a very aggressive compressor. That's what a limiter is. A maximizer, it is a limiter plus a gain. So as you bring down the threshold, you're also bringing up the output gain, not the output gain, the output volume sort of thing, right? So it's like, goes like this. The more you bring down the threshold, you're bringing up the volume. And the point where the threshold starts compressing, it starts compressing, so it's like you're compressing at the level where you are close to zero, okay? So that's what a maximizer is. There are multiband maximizers, and there's a lot that you can do with maximizer. We'll get there in a second. All right, so that's that. Dynamics. We've done a little bit of dynamics control, and now the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna use a multiband compressor. In my case, I'm going to use Ozons, and it's gonna be. Let me just prepare Ozone real quick. So we're gonna have EQ, dynamics, then we're gonna have where is it? E major. We're gonna have an exciter and the maximizer. That's it, basically. All right. So again, what I just loaded is dynamics, exciter, E major, and maximizer. You can have this like this. Doesn't really affect. Cool. So dynamics. All right. So this is a multi-band compressor. See, 1, 2, 3, and 4 bands. Okay. So I'm gonna be limiting and compressing if needed. So compressing and limiting if needed each one of these bands, and this is gonna help. So basically, we're gonna be compressing each one of these bands, like the super low, low, mid, and high. I'm gonna rearrange this. Usually, the way it comes like this, and then I prefer having it like this. Have 2 bands for the low frequencies, 1 band for the mid and low, mid, and mid, and 1 band for the mid, high, and high frequencies. Okay. You can look at this like this, sub low, like very low, low, mid, and high frequency sort of thing. Okay, so in each one of these cases, you see these 2 lines. This is the compressor, and this is the limiter. We're gonna bring down the compressor and the limiter. So as a general rule, I'm gonna move very fast, but the low frequencies are the hardest to control, the low frequencies. So for the low frequencies, we're gonna have a little bit of compression and a little bit of limiting. That's one thing. For the high frequencies, we're just gonna have a little bit of compression, not limiting. That's one thing. For the low frequencies, the limiter is gonna be a little bit more aggressive because we wanna make sure that we truly limit that. For the high frequencies, we don't need that much. That's the second thing. And the third thing is for the low frequencies, the attack and release is going to be faster. All right. For the high frequencies, it's going to be, we want it to sound a little bit more natural, so it's not going to be as fast. It doesn't need to be as fast. You can have it fast. Just listen and hear the flavor that it gives. So we're going to do this. That's it. Let's do this. Now we're going to go to the loudest part to do this. So I'm gonna start with the lowest frequencies. So it starts like this, right? And it's like. It's still not it's compressing and limiting like 4 dBs in the loudest part. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm trying to keep it as transparent as possible. Now, when we reach the last point here in the maximizer and we start pushing this down to make it sound louder, if we want it to sound even louder, we will have to come back here to the dynamics and compress each band and limit each band a little bit more. So because this is helping, this is compressing dynamics. Let me just gonna go back to time. Just look at my track for 1 second and see how much this ranges. Look at this. Boom, 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 bam, right? Look here. It stays so still. Right? It's like, because there's a lot of compression going on, even though there are swells and all that. And you can see it here. It's you know, it's there's not that. Right? Let's just compare real quick to mine. But you can see the waveform. There's not, and here we've got so many more. Just that it creates that, and they killed all that. It's okay. Just if you're going after that sound, then that's perfectly okay. That is achieved by compressing and compressing and compressing and compressing and compressing. If you've got our mixing for the home studio composer course, the way Luigi explains that is, when you are creating your mixing template, is like you have the different sections, the orchestra, guitars, bass, etc. Right, and you've got the percussion and the epic percussion, orchestral percussion, drums, etc. And then you start creating these groups and this section and all that. And there is compression and limiting in every step of the way, right? In the track, in the group, in the subgroup, and everything. It's like it's compressing and compressing and compressing and compressing in a way that, because you're just compressing a little bit each time, it feels very, very natural and transparent. But at the end of the day, you've got so much dynamic control. It's just the way it is these days. It's like see who can sound the loudest, sort of thing. But that's how it's done. It's not that you have to do it, but this is how it's done. Okay, so this helps. All right, so I'm just gonna keep going. So I compress this band. I'm gonna move to this one. This is the loudest. High frequencies are not problematic. There's not as much energy in the mid-high frequencies as in the mid and low frequencies. Still we're gonna compress them a little bit. So overall, let's see what we've got. Compressing more the low frequencies and less the high frequencies, faster, slower, tiny bit slower. Higher ratios, 16 for the limiter and 2 for the compressor, 1.5 for the compressor in the highest frequencies. So you can see it's compressing each band, and I organize them like very like subsonic almost, low frequencies, mid and high frequencies. So that's that. So that's dynamic control, multiband compressor. You can use C6, you can use FabFilter Pro MB, or any multiband compressor. Right, so that's that. Exciter basically, let me just organize them similarly. So the exciter basically adds high frequencies. Then you've got different flavors. I'm gonna use a triode, but it's got all its flavors. Like triode is a type of tube. So tube, tape, worm, dual triode. I'm just gonna use triode. And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of excitement. It's just like adds, it's like if you did this, if it's similar to, if it's like if you did this a little bit, right? But it feels different, all right? So that's the effect that it creates. Now, we're not gonna go that far. It's gonna be subtle, okay? But that's sort of what it creates. All right, adding high frequencies or exciter, brightening your mix up. It always feels pleasant, so be careful, because you know it feels pleasant. Then your ear gets used to it. You bring more and more and more and more, bring up more and more and more, and then at some point like this sounds nice, and then you come back the next day, it's like, whoa, this is super bright. So you want to avoid that. But I'm gonna add a little bit of excitement in the high frequencies and the mid frequencies. Not as much. I'm not gonna do anything here. So you can hear this in the Piatti hits and all that. That is why I didn't go that extreme here, adding high frequencies, because I know that later on I was gonna add a little bit. I'm gonna activate oversampling, and oversampling basically is like, so the signal comes here at 48 kilohertz. I'm gonna bring it up at 96, do the processing, and then bring it down to 48. That's what it's doing here, and it's nice, especially to work on the high frequencies. So try to, because we don't have the Piatti all the time, try to listen the staccato violins over the left, and see how it changes the sound, how it brightens the sound as I bring it up. So it's a tiny bit brighter, that's it. Valerio, Mark, are you using multiple compressors? Are they side chained? No, they are not side chained. I'm using multiple compressors. No, in this case I am not. I use multiple compressors during the mixing process. This is just mastering. I am using a multiband compressor here in Dynamics, and then I'm gonna use a limiter here when I'm maximizing. Second question, also Mark, would it make sense to master using stems or sections? I've done that during the mixing process already. So I do the mixing, and then I separate in different stems and recompress or redo whatever I have to do in the stems. I sometimes, when I'm done mixing, I export like orchestra, synths, and percussion, and I do the mastering having those three things, and then I can readjust volumes with these three. So it's a great idea. For this class, to keep it simpler, I just exported the final stereo track so we could move faster. That's a great question. But not as much as strings, brass, woods. That's the mixing process sort of thing, like high short strings, high low strings, long, and all that. The 30-40 tracks to mix, and then down to 5-6 stems within the mixing process, and then stereo export to mastering. And sometimes when I'm mastering, I like having 2 or 3 stems, like orchestra, synths, and percussion, or melodic and percussive stuff, that type of thing, because it gives me a little bit more freedom when doing the volume automation and control dynamics, especially for the percussion. So that's nice, but usually I have done that during the mixing process. All right, cool. And one more. Okay, that's great. Could you explain oversampling again? Sorry. Yes, definitely. Oversampling. So my track here is, when I exported this track, it was at 48 kilohertz. Now, we are in the digital world, right, when we are mixing here. So back in the days, when we were mixing, we were using like hardware units to EQ and compress and all that. We knew nothing about the digital world. Those units don't know nothing about the digital world. So it's just analog. It's analog audio coming in that unit, and then there's a series of like transistors, tubes, and stuff like that that are doing they are affecting the sound in a way that feels very organic. Now there is a lot of resolution, right, in an analog sound. When we convert this to digital, there's bit rate and resolution, and then so in this case this track is 48 kilohertz 24 bit, right? If we were working at 96 or 192 kilohertz, we would have so much more resolution, right? And so it's like you know, HD 2.5K, 4K, 8K, right? In the video, it's like a 4K TV has more resolution than a HD TV, and then an 8K monitor has a lot of resolution. So the same thing with audio. Now, the more resolution you have, then the better it's gonna sound when processing. Now, this signal, this track, it's at 48 kilohertz, okay? And so it's like, even if you do oversampling and you bring it up at 192 or 96 kilohertz, it's still gonna sound the same because it comes from 48. So even if you oversample, it's gonna sound the same. Now, if you oversample it before applying some sort of processing, the plugin is gonna be able to work better with a more resolution signal, and so that's what it does. It oversamples it, goes from 48 to 96 or to 192 kilohertz. That's the processing, or is it here? That's the processing, and then it brings it down at 48. After the processing, after doing the processing at 192 kilohertz or 96 kilohertz. And that most of the UAD plugins, they do exactly that. Most of them do oversampling. And most of them have a lower CPU processing version of those. And basically what that means is that they do not do oversampling. All right, so dynamics, exciter, and then E major. So I'm gonna do something similar here. E major is gonna open the sound a little bit, and I just wanna open them the high and mid frequencies, not that much here, and here I may actually narrow the sound a little bit. So it's gonna go like this. So that's the difference, just so you hear the difference. Now I'm gonna be realistic. So if you hear a trumpet, high strings, and piatti hits, it's opening the sound for those high frequencies. So the female choir is what you can hear, how it's opening the sound here. Cellos and bassoons are here. I'm not gonna do anything here. Subsonic frequencies almost here. Right, A, B. So what is very, very subtle again, and what you have to search for, it's like there's a little bit more of sound information to the extreme left and right, and you can see how that space is filled up. But you know, it's like the mix is like, boom, it's like it opens a little bit and finds a little bit some more space in the extreme left and right, and in a way you're gaining a little bit of clarity by opening the sound a little bit. So I've done dynamics, I've done exciter, I've done E major, and then I'm gonna do maximizer. And here's where we're gonna get the track sound loud, okay? So this is very, very simple. And remember, this is how loud Hans Zimmer's track sounded. -6, right? Okay, this is ours. It's already compressing a little bit. We can go farther. So we can get there at -6, but it doesn't sound as clean as this one here. It's compressing quite a bit. So I would feel comfortable here. All right, that's it. Now, if you wanted to go farther, I like the IRC3 clipping or crisp setting. And in that setting, I always like to bring this down at -0.1 dBs, because I know that some transitions go beyond 0, and that, you know, if I'm converting this to MP3 and other AAC and other formats, then it can, you know, there can be a little bit of clipping, and we want to avoid that. All right. So if you wanted to go farther, like if you are trying to compete with loudness, I personally like this preset IRC. If you wanted to go to push this mix even louder, then well, I would go back here. I would compress and limit a little bit more. That's crazy. I don't personally like this, but if you were going to the loudest possible, you're killing all the dynamics, you're losing everything. For this type of music, I don't think you have to push it that hard. So I would keep the dynamics, you know. That's more than enough. Okay, and finally the last process will be adding dithering, and I would go with 24 bit, and that's it. And that's loud enough. To me, my tracks around here, just beyond this red area, -14, it's more than enough. This one is loud. Comparison. This one still has more body, more low end. This sounds darker. The darker it sounds, the more body it feels that the track has, because there's less brightness. Also careful with dynamics if you are killing too much of the... It's good so far, but if you are compressing a lot the low frequencies, then you're losing that body a little bit. Right, so that's it. Oh, and make sure when you export, make sure, super important, that you deactivate this guy. So make sure to either bypass it or remove this plugin before you export, because this is adding a curve. And it's nice for your headphones, so you get a good reference, but when you are exporting, you have to remove this plugin or bypass this plugin. All right, that's it. That's I hope you had fun. I hope you learned a lot. This it's a process. It's not that hard once you understand, but it's very meaningful. I hope you got a grasp of it. Just watch the video several times and then apply it to your music. Just make sure to be subtle and try not to make a mistake here, because it's gonna affect the entire track. And you've worked a lot in your music, in your track up until you got here. Just make sure that you don't make any mistakes that messes up the track. All right. Other than that, one more time, if you've gotten here, congratulations. If on top of that, you've put the work, you've put the hours, you've practiced, you've done the sketches each day, you've done the orchestration, and then you selected one of the tracks, you've done the mixing, and today after this class you do the mastering, not just you're gonna end having a professional sounding industry standard track that sounds awesome with a lot of production value, that can compete with any professional track out there, but also you are awesome. You've done a lot. Basically, you've attended these classes, but you have decided to put the work. You've committed. You've moved forward without any accountability. You've put your own deadlines, and you have done the impossible. So congratulations. It's a lot of work. You should be very proud of yourself. As I've said earlier, the only other thing that the most important thing in music or any skill that you want to develop, it's basically practice. It's practice. It's putting the work. I've given you the concepts, the teaching. I've done the teaching. I've also taken the lead, so you can see the process. You can copy the process. But if you truly want to learn, it's putting the hours, it's practicing. The only thing that could speed up things a little bit more is mentoring, and that's why we have our Momentum program. I'll leave a link down below in the description in case that you are interested, where you can. It's mentoring with me one-on-one and a team of 10 teachers. We also bring Hollywood composers to literally give you an assignment, teach you, and critique your music. So you've got multiple teachers critiquing your music. You've got access to me, Q&A each week with me. And on top of that, you've got Hollywood composers that actually give you assignments and critique your music live. They speak with you one-on-one. So that's the only thing that kind of speed up the process a little bit more. But you've done a lot here. Congratulations. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for putting the time. Thank you for participating. Thank you for the questions. And thank you for following us. It is amazing. I hope that you got a lot of value. I thought that you enjoyed the process, that you had fun as well. I hope you enjoyed the Q&As. And that ties with tomorrow. We're going to have the last Q&A. It's going to be very special. So make sure to attend. I am dying. I'm so looking forward to see your progress, to ask you questions, and to see where you were and where you are now. On top of that, as you know, we still have a few master classes to go. Those are gonna be a lot of fun over this next month. Check out the calendar. You know how to access the calendar. It's in the students dashboard, first topic. And that is it. I will see you tomorrow in the Q&A. Thanks for the hard work. Thanks for committing. Thanks for watching all these classes. You are awesome.